the autumn of 72 AD, a column of nearly 10,000 heavily armored Roman soldiers marched across the parched, shimmering salt flats of the Judean desert. They were led by the ruthless and battle-hardened governor Lucius Flavius Silva, commander of the elite Legio Exfratensis. The Roman legions had just spent years brutally crushing the great Jewish revolt, systematically leveling the city of Jerusalem, burning its grand temple to ash, and scattering its population. The war was officially over, except for one final infuriating pocket of absolute asymmetric resistance. High above the desert floor, sitting atop an isolated, knife-edged plateau of sheer rock, loomed the fortress of Masada. To the modern mind, the power of the ancient Roman Empire is often viewed as a political or administrative construct. We picture laws, senates, and treaties. But Rome's true global sovereignty relied entirely on a terrifying psychological doctrine, the absolute certainty of inescapable retribution. If a tribe, a city, or a nation rebelled against the eagle banners, Rome would hunt them across the face of the earth, no matter how far they ran or where they hid. They would expend any amount of silver, sacrifice any number of legions, and alter any landscape to prove that nobody was beyond the reach of Roman iron. The rebels trapped on top of Masada, a radical faction known as the Sicarii, or Daggermen, believed they had found the one place on earth that could defy this doctrine. Masada was a masterpiece of natural and military engineering. The plateau rose nearly 1,300 feet straight out of the desert floor, surrounded on all sides by vertical breaking cliffs that made a traditional infantry assault a physical impossibility. The fortress was protected by a massive casemate wall, packed with hidden storehouses containing decades' worth of preserved grain, wine, and weapons, and engineered with a brilliant network of underground stone aqueducts that captured flash flood waters to fill massive Olympic-sized cisterns deep within the rock. The Sicarii looked down from their cloud-swept ramparts at the approaching Roman dust cloud and felt no fear. They possessed enough water and food to outlast the empire itself, and the only path up the mountain was a narrow, treacherous track known as the Snake Path, a trail so steep and exposed that two men standing at the top could easily slaughter an entire army. The rebels believed they were completely out of reach, safe within a citadel that defied the physics of siege warfare. They did not understand that Flavius Silva did not care about the vertical height of a cliff. If a mountain stood between a Roman general and his target, the legion would simply erase the mountain. Flavius Silva rode out across the white desert sands, inspecting the vertical limestone cliffs of Masada. He realized instantly that trying to force his men up the snake path would result in total tactical suicide. He needed to execute a ruthless, cold strategy of absolute containment. He ordered his 10,000 legionnaires and thousands of Jewish prisoners of war to construct an unbroken 6-mile-long stone wall, a circumvallation wall, completely wrapping around the entire base of the mountain. This wall was reinforced with 8 heavily fortified stone military camps placed at every strategic choke point. The message was unmistakable. Nobody was getting out, and no help was getting in. Masada was officially isolated, transformed into a high-altitude prison cell. But a passive blockade was not enough for the Roman war machine. Flavius Silva needed to breach the walls, and he designed a military engineering project of unprecedented, terrifying audacity. He targeted the western face of the plateau, where a natural rocky outcrop called the White Promontory jutted out from the desert valley. Silva ordered his engineers to construct a colossal, solid stone assault ramp, an artificial land bridge, stretching from the valley floor straight up the sheer face of the cliff to the base of the fortress walls. The operation became a grueling mechanical demonstration of Roman willpower. Under a blinding, suffocating desert heat that frequently exceeded 110 degrees Fahrenheit, thousands of workers systematically piled hundreds of thousands of tons of heavy stone blocks, gravel, and packed earth into the deep gorge. To secure the sides of the massive ramp against structural collapse, the engineers packed the interior with a dense matrix of heavy timber beams, locking the stone into a permanent sloping road. The Sicarii looked down from their ramparts in growing psychological horror. Day after day, month after grueling month, the artificial ridge crept higher and higher into the sky. The Macedonians had built a road through the ocean at Tyre, but here, the Roman legions were building a highway straight into the clouds. The rebels launched volleys of heavy stones and arrows down upon the workers, but the Romans simply forced their Jewish prisoners to stand at the front of the construction lines, knowing the defenders would hesitate to slaughter their own people. The logistics loop was flawless. The ramp grew higher, footer by foot, until it reached a staggering height of nearly 300 feet, terminating directly beneath the limestone battlements of Masada. By the spring of 73 AD, the impossible road was complete. Flavius Silva ordered his soldiers to execute the final, lethal phase of the operation. The legionnaires constructed a massive iron-reinforced wooden siege tower over 90 feet tall and began the agonizing, slow process of wheeling it up the steep stone ramp. The tower was an absolute engine of destruction. Its lower deck housed a colossal, iron-headed battering ram, while its upper platforms were packed with heavy catapults and elite Roman scorpion archers, who rained a continuous blinding volley of arrows and stone balls down upon the inner defenders. Under the absolute cover of this artillery fire, the Roman engineering teams locked the iron ram into position against the limestone casemate wall of the fortress. The rhythm of the assault was deafening. The massive iron head slammed into the stone foundations hour after hour, sending deep, terrifying structural vibrations through the rock tunnels of the citadel. The outer stone wall, which had stood for a century, began to crack, splinter, and crumble into dust under the unyielding kinetic force of the machine. But the Sicarii were not passive victims. They were fanatical survivalists. As the outer stone wall began to fracture, the rebels frantically engineered an internal, secondary defensive wall directly behind the breach. This inner wall was a masterpiece of emergency adaptation. It was constructed as a hollow framework using heavy wooden beams stripped from the royal palaces of Herod and then packed tightly with deep layers of soft, loose earth. When the Roman battering ram struck this new barrier, the soft earth simply absorbed the kinetic impact, cushioning the blows and preventing the structure from breaking. In fact, the rhythmic pounding of the ram actually compressed the loose dirt, making the emergency wall denser, stronger, and completely impervious to blunt force trauma. Flavius Silva stood on the assault ramp, watching his battering ram bounce uselessly against the soft earth wall. He realized instantly that he had to change his tactical medium. If the wall could not be broken by iron, it would be consumed by fire. He ordered his legionnaires to launch thousands of flaming torches and chemical firepots directly into the wooden framework of the secondary wall. The dry, seasoned timber beams caught fire instantly, turning the defensive line into a roaring, impassable wall of infernal heat. But as the flames began to consume the wood, a sudden, violent desert wind shifted, blowing fiercely from the north. The gale caught the roaring fire and pushed it straight back down the ramp, engulfing the Roman siege towers and threatening to incinerate the legion's own equipment. The Sicarii cheered from the ramparts, believing the hand of God had finally intervened to destroy their oppressors. The illusion lasted for barely an hour. Late in the afternoon, the desert wind shifted again, blowing with absolute fury from the south. The wall of fire was pushed violently back into the interior of the fortress, completely consuming the remaining wooden structures and exposing the raw, smoking breach to the open air. Flavius Silva pulled his troops back down the ramp, setting a heavy guard at the base of the breach and ordering his legions to prepare for a full-scale infantry assault at the first light of dawn. Inside Masada, the smoke cleared to reveal a cold, terrifying reality. The defenses were gone, the ocean of Roman armor was waiting at the bottom of the road, and the ticking clock had finally run out. At the first light of dawn, the Roman legions put on their armor, drew their short swords, and marched up the massive stone ramp in a flawless, disciplined battle formation. They expected to meet a fierce, claustrophobic, and blood-soaked wall of desperate hand-to-hand resistance at the breach. They were prepared for a slaughter. Instead, they stepped into a tomb. When the soldiers poured through the smoking ruins of the wall, they found themselves standing in an absolute suffocating silence. There were no war cries, no flying daggers, and no defensive lines. As the legionnaires advanced through the burning streets of the citadel, they discovered a scene of chilling, systematic devastation. The royal palaces had been burned, the wealth of the fortress had been collected into massive heaps and set ablaze, and the bodies of 960 men, women, and children lay neatly arranged in rows across the stone kurops, their throats cut. The Sicarii leader, Eleazar ben Yair, had realized that survival was no longer an option on the table. In his final historic address to the trapped rebels, recorded by the historian Josephus, he argued that a quick, self-inflicted death was infinitely more honorable than falling into the hands of the Roman legionnaires, where the men would be tortured, the women would be systematically violated, and the children would spend the rest of their lives in chains as slaves. Because their faith strictly forbade suicide, the rebels engineered a grim, mechanical execution lottery. Every man slaughtered his own family. Then, 10 men were chosen by lot to execute the remaining men. Finally, a single man killed the remaining 9 before setting the palace on fire and driving his sword through his own chest. Only 2 women and 5 children, who had hidden deep inside the underground stone water conduits, survived to tell the story of Masada's final hours. The conquest of Masada stands as a definitive, terrifying monument to the absolute triumph of unyielding engineering logistics over impossible geography. The massive stone ramp that Legio Exfratensis built never dissolved back into the desert sands. Over 2,000 years later, the artificial land bridge still cuts through the Judean valley, a permanent white scar on the face of the earth, proving that a road can be built to any fortress if you possess the calculated, mechanical willpower to move the earth. The fall of Masada sends a profound, chilling echo across 20 centuries of global history. It reminds us that our most secure hideouts, our most heavily fortified sanctuaries, and our most permanent walls are ultimately illusions when matched against an adversary with unlimited resources and absolute operational discipline. As we look at our own modern fortresses, our financial safe havens, our gated digital networks, and our geographic isolations, the quiet, wind-swept ruins of Masada offer a sobering warning across the millennia. There is no mountain high enough and no wall thick enough to protect you from an enemy that is willing to rewrite the geography of the world just to tear you down. The ramp has reached the sky, and the final citadel of the revolt has dissolved into absolute silence. When the unyielding logistics of an empire march up a road built through the clouds, history remembers that walls are only as strong as the willpower behind them. If you possess the cold, analytical focus required to study these high-stakes operations, to deconstruct the engineering triumphs, and to look into the raw human endurance that chose